Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started today. Welcome to the Virginia Virtual Farm to Fork program. My name is Jordan Jones, and I am the 4-H agent in Isle of Wight and Southampton counties. I'll be serving as your host this afternoon. This educational program will highlight Virginia agriculture, community nutrition, and farm-to-table connections, and is brought to you by Virginia Cooperative Extension, and it is an education outreach program of Virginia's land-grant universities, and those are Virginia Tech and Virginia State University. Virginia Cooperative Extension's educational programs are delivered through a network of faculty at these two universities and 108 county and city offices, 11 agricultural research and extension centers, and 6 4-H educational centers. I encourage all of you to participate in your local Virginia Cooperative Extension programs to learn more if you have not already. Today, we'll be focusing on herbs. I will now introduce our speakers for the day, who will be taking you on a tour of commercial herb growers. We'll be talking about growing herbs in a raised bed garden, and then it'll be followed by a recipe. And you'll also be learning how to add delicious herbs to your diet. We're going to start with Megan Tierney. She is a VCE Agricultural and Natural Resources Agent, and she specializes in environmental horticulture, and she works out of the York and Poquoson, hope I said that correctly, Virginia Cooperative Extension Office. She has been an agent since 2008 and strives to improve the environment for her community. Next, we have Christina Ruszczyk-Murray. She is a VCE 4-H Youth Development Agent, and she works out of the King William and King and Queen County offices. She has been an agent since 2011, and she loves to help 4-H kids build communication skills, leadership skills, and responsibility by participating in numerous events. These two ladies will be your co-presenters today. We will also be viewing videos from Chris Mullins. He is Extension Specialist at Virginia State University. He helps farmers and gardeners with growing vegetables, especially in greenhouses. And so after the video, he'll be available for questions if you guys have any. And last but not least, we'll be hearing from Terry Nish. She is a recently retired 4-H agent from King George County. She will be showing you a recipe of how to make a very delicious caprese sandwich. Your chat monitor today will be Miss Mary Beth Martin. She is the 4-H Youth Development Agent in Bedford County. So if you have any questions, she will be able to help direct those questions to the individuals that can answer them for you. So if you have any questions that you would like the presenters to answer, please type them in the Q&A box, and we will try to address as many of those as we possibly can. Note that there is also a chat box, but that might not be monitored, so please make sure that you use the Q&A box for questions that you would like to be answered. All right, so thank you for listening to this welcome, and without further ado, we will start our presentation.
Okay, a little setup problem there. Sorry about that. So if you're here to learn about the benefits of herbs, how you can grow them, and where you can get them, then you're in the right place. We're going to talk about the health benefits of herbs, show you commercial production, and examples of how you can grow your own herbs in containers and raised beds. Then we're going to give you some recipe ideas on how to use fresh herbs in meals. We will end with the summary and time for questions. Let's begin by visualizing your favorite herb and thinking about how that herb smells. Maybe it's basil, peppermint, or rosemary. Now I want you to think about that smell as the scent of good health. What do I mean by that? The natural chemicals in plants are powerful defenders of disease. Plants have an ability that we do not. They're like chemical factories that can make things to defend themselves against fungi, bacteria, viruses, herbivores, and parasites. Animals have an immune system, we have antibodies, to help protect us. It can be boosted by the chemicals we get from plants when we eat them. Have you ever thought about a carrot or garlic? How does it survive in soil? If we left our hand in soil for a month, we would be in trouble. We would start to decay from bacteria and fungus in that soil. So how does the carrot and the garlic survive? They're little chemists and make different chemicals to defend themselves that they send out to their different parts. They might have different chemicals in their roots than in their leaves or their flowers. So how can you maximize benefits to our body from plants? We can focus on eating a wide variety of vegetables, fruits, and herbs. Focus on having a rainbow of color on your plate. Herbs are often discounted as dried things we sprinkle to add flavor, when in fact, herbs are powerful defenders with their antioxidant properties. The different colors that show through on plants are different chemicals that can help our body defend itself. The larger the variety, the better. Here's a nice chart that shows the different colors of phytonutrients that are common plants that we eat contain. Plants were our original medicines, and their chemical properties are still widely used throughout pharmaceutical companies to synthesize the medicines we use today. Currently, there's a lot of research going into the use of plant parts in their whole form as opposed to synthesizing out one chemical. Findings are showing that the synergistic effects of the different chemicals in whole plant parts boost their effectiveness to fight disease. With diseases becoming resistant to antibiotics, there is a great need for more research into the power of these plants. That is being realized as we speak. You will never look at oregano the same way after learning this. Oregano is known for its antimicrobial, antiviral, and antifungal properties with its phenols and monoterpenes, and it's being studied for its demonstrated abilities as a potent antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-diabetic, and cancer suppressor agents. Think of herbs again and picture them as the smell of good health. Basil, peppermint, parsley, and oregano, they're all full of antioxidants, which are substances that can prevent or slow damage to cells caused by unstable molecules known as free radicals. These free radicals are produced by our body as a reaction to the environment and other pressures. So just like green leafy vegetables, fresh herbs contain large amounts of vitamin A, C, and K. Many herb plants also contain polyphenols. Polyphenols are plant compounds that have both antioxidant and anti-inflammatory capabilities. Polyphenols are only found in plants and plant-based products, which is why diets rich in plant-based foods can offer protection against the development of cancers, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, neurodegenerative diseases. The polyphenols in herbs and other plant-based foods can also reduce chronic inflammation and its associated risk with chronic disease, according to University of Michigan. Take a look next time you're in your grocery store for live and cut herbs to add to your plate. You can also make a trip to your local garden center to find a larger variety of herbs from seed or small plants. Play with different recipes to find ways to use herbs that pleases your taste buds. Now let's look at a video featuring our VSU horticulture specialist, Chris Mullins, on commercial herb production.
Well, it's cold outside, and very little, if anything, is grown in your garden right now. And yet you can still find fresh produce and locally grown herbs in your grocery store. And this is how it's done in greenhouses. We're at a large greenhouse operation near Harrisonburg, Virginia, called Shenandoah Growers. They do herbs, basil, thyme, and different ones. They grow about 10 million plants each year. And we're really excited to be here, and we're going to give you some tips on what you can do with some herbs that you might want to grow or that you might even buy, and what you can do with them afterwards. Well, here today we're with Margaret Shepard. Margaret's the greenhouse grower here at Shenandoah Growers, and we're not in a greenhouse right now, are we?
We are not. Technically we are.
Right.
So this is vertical farming. So we looked around at our greenhouse and realized there wasn't any more space, so we just looked up. So with just one of these carts, we can get 735 plants. So we could grow our capacity without having to expand our greenhouses.
Right.
These only take about 8 days in the nursery stage, and with that, we can ship them out, and they're nice, strong plants any time of the year, whether it's cloudy, sunny, doesn't matter, 8 days, and it's always consistent.
So if somebody at home wanted to, what would be one tip maybe to try to, we can see here you can grow herbs really close together and really get a lot of herbs in a small amount of space. Could they do that at home maybe?
Yeah, what we like to do is grow the right amount of space for that plant at that stage. So once they get to around this stage, they do need to be spaced out a little bit more.
Okay.
But until then, there's no need to use that empty space when they're just small little plugs.
All right, Margaret, I noticed the lights here. What kind of lights are these?
These are full spectrum LED lights. So with this, you can grow basically what the sun would give you, rather than just the fluorescent lights. So with this, you can grow plants even when it's dark. You know, now when it's getting dark at 5 o'clock, now you can keep growing.
Okay, so a homeowner could probably find lights like this if they Google LED lights for the home. They could find something they could use.
Yeah, there are plenty of home kits that are great for apartments, windowsills.
Okay. Why don't we go see what a consumer might do with these once that they buy them and take them home, and how they can keep them going. Well, we're in the greenhouse now, and we're seeing some of the herbs that they produce here. We're here with Mike Smetak. Mike's the general manager here at Shenandoah Growers. We really appreciate you letting us come here today. So this is what the basil or the cilantro would look like as a finished product.
Correct.
And this would go to the consumer after it's come out of the greenhouse. So they would cut this and use it. But is there a tip, a way that they could maybe keep this growing?
Yes, absolutely. So Chris, for those of you with a green thumb, what you want to do, in order to use this daily, you'll snip the top node with a pair of sharp scissors or a very sharp knife. And then there's actually care instructions on the back of our packages and also at our website, fresherbs.com, that will show you how to regrow this in your house. If you want to just utilize this for a very short period of time, say 2 to 3 weeks, keep it in said package, place it on a saucer and water from the bottom. Now, if you want to continue to grow fresh herbs year-round, what you're going to want to do is transplant this into a larger pot, because what happens is the plant itself actually uses up all the available nutrients in the soil, so you'll need to find new media and plant it into a larger pot. But if, like I said, if you go to fresherbs.com, we have all those instructions there step by step in order to supply you with year-round culinary herbs.
Okay, great. I love it. So if a consumer, again, wanted to do this at home, just grow them from seed, they'd have maybe get a grow light in the wintertime.
Correct.
And maybe on a windowsill even.
Yes.
Because they can find grow lights that are small enough and put them close together, and they can put a lot of herbs in that small space.
Absolutely they can.
Well, Mike, thanks again for letting us come here today. It's a wonderful operation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it as well.
Well, for more information about producing herbs in the wintertime, please contact your local county extension office and talk to a master gardener. From the Ground Up, I'm Chris Mullins, and we'll see you next time.
From the Ground Up is presented with the generous advice and assistance of Virginia Cooperative Extension. Visit their website at ext.vt.edu.
Virginia is a large producer of fresh-cut herbs, and the number of growers is exploding as people become more aware of the power of herbs in your diet, as well as their ability to render great flavor. Now we're going to hear from VCE 4-H agent Christina Ruszczyk-Murray about container growing herbs.
Thank you, Megan. I wanted to talk a little bit first about the benefits of growing them in containers. They're movable. They're really movable. When I, 2 years ago, moved from the Eastern Shore to King William County, I had a pot on my front porch that had rosemary and chives in it from a 4-H fundraiser we did at our youth garden. And I was able to grab that pot and move it here, and now I have much bigger rosemary and much bigger chives that have been divided several times, but they're the same ones I've had for years. I also have a couple pots of lemongrass in my yard. This is a little bit more practical. And I can take those lemongrass pots with me wherever they go. Lemongrass is supposed to, I'm choosing to believe, it wards off mosquitoes. And I can take it to like my hammock, which is in a really shady part of the yard, and use it there to try to keep mosquitoes away while I'm in the hammock, which is, lemongrass needs sun to grow and it wouldn't grow well there. So that helps. I can move it there for a couple hours or whatever, put it back in the sun, and it's fine. Having them in pots, you can get away for the weekend, and if it's going to be hot and dry, you can move them into the shade, water them well, and hope for the best and hope to not come home to dead plants. So that's really nice. They can overwinter very well. They can't, herbs, especially like basil, you could trim off, put in a cup of water, and it will root eventually. Bring that in the late summer, and after it roots, you can put it in a small container and grow it over the winter in a sunny window, and then plant it in your garden in the spring. Containers also can hold herbs in a place, like mint. If you've ever planted mint in a garden, it will take over. But if you plant mint in a container, it will stay where you put it. And I think the best thing about keeping them is they can be incredibly easily accessible for people who do not have a place to put a garden, or if the sunny spot where they would need to have an herb garden is way across the yard from their kitchen. And if they're like me in the middle of cooking and then realize, oh, I forgot to get the herbs, it's not that convenient. But picture here with the boxes on the porch, that's right outside my kitchen. And so when I do forget, they're right there. But it's also nice because in that spot, if I were to plant them at the bottom of the porch, one, they would not get enough sun, but that's also right in the path of the backyard and to the garage. So they would be trampled. It's not a very convenient spot for a garden. So it's nice to have them there. All right, next slide. All right. So herbs can grow really well in containers as long as their conditions are met. The first thing is those containers need to be 8 inches deep. It's a good idea to have a hole drilled in the bottom of those containers. They really need good drainage. It's good to use a loamy soil or a potting mix. Garden soil does not work well in containers. You might need to give them a little extra love. Container herbs need a little bit more attention. You'll probably need to water them a little bit more often and possibly fertilize them about once a month. If you do not harvest them very often, they can get very gangly and they don't look so great. So it's a good idea to prune and harvest them every once in a while. All right, so this is something I've just kind of started doing lately, is keeping a record about my herbs, where they're planted, how tall they get, how well they've done, if they die, when I fertilize them, things like that. I use a journal. I know someone who uses a spreadsheet. You could just use a plain old notebook. That's what I used up until recently. I think it's really important to keep those records if you have time for it. You learn what works and what doesn't work. You learn that some herbs might not need the full sun. They might not mind a little shade. You can use a lot of trial and error this way, putting them in mixed pots, what they grew well with, what they didn't grow very well with, what did better on their own. It's also great to, sometimes you hear these traditional things like certain benefits of growing 2 different types of plants together, and see if that actually works or protects them from pests. The most common one I hear is tomatoes and basil, and for me to say that has worked. Not only does basils and tomato taste amazing together, they seem to grow well together and keep the pests away. Last year, I had a lot of infestation in my cabbage. And so I was looking for what was going on, and I found an extension publication from Cornell that said there's anecdotal evidence that sage protects cabbage from all sorts of pests. So I wrote that in my notebook, and this year I actually planted sage in pots. So when I put my cabbage in for the fall, I can transplant that sage in with the cabbage, and I can see if that works. I've never remembered that. If I hadn't written it in my notebook, it would have been there. I would have read it and it would have been gone. So I wouldn't have known to buy sage this year, because when it happened last year, I didn't have any sage. Also, I've had trouble growing tarragon for years. But I've been keeping track of what I've done and where I put it. And this year I tried a different kind of container. I put it in a different spot, and so far so good. We'll see what happens. But this year I tried to grow cilantro for the first time, and it's not doing so well. So when I'm thinking about it, I do some research and make some notes. It's kind of becoming a little bit of a hobby. So I really not only enjoy eating herbs, but I like growing them. It's kind of relaxing for me. And I've killed more plants than I'd like to admit, but I feel like with my patience, determination, and record keeping, it's paying off. I'm learning a lot from my mistakes and becoming pretty good at it. Thank you. That's all I got.
So next up, we're going to look at a short video clip on how to put herbs in raised beds. Raised bed gardens are another wonderful way to grow herbs. You can remove the likelihood of contaminated soils by adding certified compost to your raised beds. You can also add false bottoms to lift them up to keep them away from flooding. Most herbs are from the Mediterranean, where the soils are very sandy and water drains very well. So when planting herbs, make sure to use soils that drain easily. Many herbs will grow in raised beds. Some examples are thyme, oregano, fennel, horseradish, borage, basil, mint, savory, rosemary, sage, coriander, and parsley. You can make your raised beds fun by adding objects that kids can learn from or play with. Herbs are easy to grow, and it can save you money by growing your own. And when consumed, they help your body fight disease with antioxidants. So herbs are also great for pollinators. Pollinators help keep the flowering plants in the world going and are involved in about 85% of our agriculture, providing us with food and resources. These flowers of herbs and other plants provide pollinators with nectar and pollen to keep them alive. Plants have many benefits in our lives. Now let's check out how we can use fresh herbs in our meals. Today we're going to learn about how to add herbs to your diet in a tasty way that allows you to get extra added antioxidants into your body. Have you ever had leftover cilantro or parsley from a recipe that you've made and you had no idea what to do with it? Well, pesto is an awesome answer, and you can also freeze it and keep it for another time. So get creative and try different nuts and different greens for your pesto recipes. Pesto has 4 major ingredients. The first you're going to want to start with is your fresh herbs. So go ahead and pick out the herbs you like or what you're growing. And then you need to add some nuts to that. So find your favorite nuts for that. The third ingredient would be garlic. You can go as heavy or as light as you want on that garlic. And then the final ingredient that really makes the pesto is olive oil. Always wash your hands and your herbs and produce thoroughly before handling. The greens in the blender are cilantro and parsley, fresh from the garden. And then we're adding slivered almonds, garlic cloves, salt and pepper, and olive oil. And we blend it all together to finish it off and have our awesome pesto. When working with plant foods, use separate cutting boards from meats. Add pesto to your favorite beef, fish, or chicken dish. You can also make a homemade salad dressing that's olive oil based by using sherry wine, red wine vinegar, salt, and pepper, as well as chopped up fresh basil. You're going to mix that all together. And you're going to pour that over your favorite salad greens and add your favorite things like tomatoes and cucumbers.
Good. To make our flatbread caprese sandwich, I'm going to start by applying pesto, smearing pesto, a liberal amount of pesto, to the flatbread. Once we get the pesto on there, and this is homemade pesto with basil out of my own garden, and the electric skillet, not that I should put my hand in it, has been preheated to 300 degrees. I'm going to start with some pieces of mozzarella. And then I'm going to layer some tomato on top. And then we're going to cook it on the skillet until the mozzarella melts, and it should give us a nice sandwich there. So you can just film down here. So we're gonna turn them over to brown both sides. Never mind. Flip the sandwiches to brown both sides so you don't burn on one side. And you want a nice brown, crusty outside to give it some crunch. Okay, when the sandwiches are nice and brown on both sides, you lift them out. These are going to be messy to eat because of the combination of melted mozzarella and the oil and the pesto, and I can't get it out with that. Go. So we're gonna take it out, and you can see it's a little bit messy because the oil from the pesto and the melted mozzarella makes it a bit soupy. But there we have our mozzarella, a caprese sandwich, caprese flatbread sandwich. Caprese flatbread sandwich. We're gonna flip the caprese sandwich.
So that was a fun video. I know you're all hungry now. So in summary, we want to talk about adding fresh herbs to our diet because it gives us additional chemicals that our immune system can use to fight off disease. We also want to remember to eat a variety of plant-based foods of varying colors to help provide us with multiple chemicals that can boost our immune system. So we want to thank you for joining us today. We have time for questions.
Yeah, so we actually have a few questions that have come across while you guys have been presenting. And so we have Megan and Christina and Chris here on the production end of things who might be able to tag team some of these questions. So I'll pose them out to you guys and you can decide who wants to answer what. But one of the first questions was that the cilantro leaves on their plant had been eaten by the caterpillars, so would those grow back?
So if they haven't eaten the stem and they're just eating the leaves, yes, they will grow back.
Awesome. Okay. And another question was that earlier in the presentation, you had mentioned herbs have antiviral, antifungal, and antibacterial properties. Are those specific to certain viruses or certain herbs for certain things?
Yeah, different herbs have different properties, different chemicals in them, so they would be specific. So that's something you can research if you're looking for some specific type of antiviral or antibacterial.
Awesome. Do you have any like specific examples maybe that you know of off the top of your head?
As far as like virus or bacteria, or?
Yes.
I think some, Megan, I think some things like, well, we might not consider them herbs, but even things like turmeric and ginger have some antiviral effects, some of the components. So there's probably been a lot of work with many of the components of some of the herbs and how they might either directly affect viruses or how they might indirectly through boosting your immune system could help you with help you fight off viruses, enteric or flu type viruses or things.
So I have a book here on some of them. Like it states that oregano is good for like athlete's feet and different things like that. Candida, ringworm. See what basil is good for. Bronchitis, was basil for bronchitis.
Awesome. So they can do some more research depending on what book are you referring to right now, Megan?
Modern Essentials. It's all about the different herbs, and it references all kinds of universities in it. As far as we can't see it.
That's okay. Someone did ask about washing herbs and how best to do that, if there was a certain method, I guess.
So food safety wise, you just want to use water. You don't want soap or anything like that. And you want to rinse them pretty thoroughly and get all the soil off of them. And then you want to kind of dry them out a little.
I soak mine and then put them in a salad spinner.
Nice.
Awesome. There was a question about going into more detail on planting, growing, and harvesting herbs or a variety of herbs in a small kitchen garden. And then in reference to that, how do you keep them then growing through the winter?
So I think that the key to that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Christina.
No, I was going to say, would the Hort people take that? There you go.
Okay. So Chris, you can add on, but I think the key to that is having the right lighting. If you don't have enough lighting for them indoors during the winter, they're not going to do very well. They'll be very spindly and you won't use them as much. You won't get as much growth on them. But if you have those LED lights, you're going to get more production out of them indoors. Because our windows have UV protectants on them that keep a lot of the light out, the spectrums out. And the further you get away from a window, and you need the right window, the one with the most sun, the less light you're getting. And that is key to any of them growing indoor.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think now there's some really good technology on lighting out there, Megan, and I think it's something that can really help a homeowner, a hobbyist grow in the wintertime, a lot of different things. And also when you think about the containers, like we talked about earlier, having the right type of media in there and making sure that they're watered properly. And just even thinking about maybe your selection of how big the particular herb's going to get and what you really want. So all those things kind of factor into, planting, growing planning and then germinating and growing the things that you're interested in. So we could probably go through different examples, but if, as far as things like mint or thyme or cilantro or basil in the kitchen garden for the winter time. But I think you can find some of that very specific information about each one of those. I think the key for all of it is having good lights, having good size containers, the proper type of media, and making sure that the fertilization and the watering is correct.
And then when you're talking about growing herbs through the winter, would that be, can you keep those alive outside? Or is that something where you would have to replant them? Because somebody also had asked later about chives and parsley, whether those were perennials or not.
So
chives,
yeah. I'm sorry, Christina.
I was going to say chives are. I don't know about parsley's not.
Parsley is a biennial, so it's 2 years and then it's going to die. And then you have rosemary's evergreen, oregano is evergreen. You have thyme that's evergreen. Now your basil is not. Your peppermint is evergreen. Sage is evergreen as well.
Okay. We had a few other questions. Somebody had said when you were talking about watering and having the right water and light, somebody said that they were a little confused in how much to water container herbs. Sometimes they see some yellowing from maybe too much or too little watering. So is there like the perfect trick or the perfect method to keeping track of that maybe?
You can get used to the weight of a pot and know when it's light, and when it's very light, you stick your finger down in it, you know that it's dry. You don't want to water anything until it's dry. The easiest way to kill a plant is to overwater it. So you want to make sure that soil dries out before you water it. That may be once a week, that may be longer or less depending on your house, your heat, your air conditioning, whatever's going on in that environment.
And remember too, that as the plant grows, it's going to require a little bit more. So as you get into that routine, just remember as it gets warmer during the growing season and as the plant grows more, it might require a little bit more watering.
Very true. And there are little water meters out there so you don't have to stick your hand down in a pot in the soil, that you can just shove down in the soil and it gives you a gauge of whether it's moist or not. And another important thing is to make sure that the pot is not sitting in water. If it sits in the water, you want to pour enough water in so that it spills out at the bottom, but you want something to separate it so it doesn't sit in that water. You could use stones, you could use a pot underneath it, anything, just so it doesn't sit in it. If it does, it just absorbs that water back up, and then it absorbs all the salts that just flushed through it. And then you'll have to, every couple months, flush the plant out because it'll be full of salts, and you'll get that like white salty crust that you get on top of pots. And you want to avoid that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Sub-irrigation can be good sometimes, but having too much of it is not a good thing. And I think one of the videos or one of the slides showed drilling holes in containers that's real important to make sure that whatever container you've got has good drainage.
Yeah, somebody had actually asked about their oregano having white spots on it. So could that be a result of the salts coming back up in, or is that a disease that might be common in oregano?
It's probably something like spider mites. They'll suck the juices from underneath the leaf, and so you get like a grayish white spotting on the top all over the different petals. That's one issue that oregano does commonly have, and it's really aesthetic. Unless it bothers you, you don't really need to do anything about it. But making sure it has really good soil with some good loam to it, some good organic matter, will help it to be a healthier plant and have less disease issues.
I do know also if you weren't sure what those spots might be, your local extension office may have a master gardener component of it that could always help you as well. So you could always contact them in your area and see if they could help you with maybe sending in more detailed pictures as well. We did have a question about mint growing out of control, but wanting to include it in a raised herb bed. Are there any maybe helpful tips on how to contain it, or herbs to keep it separate from to help with growing it more successfully?
You guys want me to take that? Okay. So mint, think of it kind of like bamboo. It needs to be contained. So you can put a container inside a container up in a raised bed. So you could have a pot down in the raised bed that keeps it from going out. Now it will send suckers out through the very bottom of a pot as well and come up through and come out. So you have to keep an eye on it. But you can pull it and you can remove it, which bamboo is very hard to do that with. So it's better than bamboo.
I will say we did have a couple of questions, and I'll just address this now. There were a couple of people who had asked about seeing the chart you had shared earlier, Megan, or getting the pesto ingredients and amounts. That if you are registered for today's event, then you will be getting all of that information and links and the slides after the event. That does go out, I believe is correct. Lena can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe you get all of that anyway. So that will be shared, but if there was something specific you wanted to know, you could always drop that in the Q&A box.
Yeah, I haven't generally been sending out the whole PowerPoint presentation, but if all the presenters are comfortable with that, I can send it out as a link through Google.
You can also Google the color of phytonutrients to get that chart, and it will come up.
Okay.
And then somebody was wanting to know the pesto ingredients with amounts again.
I don't know if that'll come with that, Lena.
That was part of your video, right, Megan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can pull that from the video and send that with the phytonutrient chart.
Great. I think our last question that we had before we run out of time was about any suggestions for controlling spider mites. You had mentioned them, and this was specifically geared towards tomatoes or other garden plants organically.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that are listed, I believe in our PMG guide, is neem oil for spider mites. So you'd want to go to our pest management guide, home grounds version, and you can go to our VCE website and just put that in the search box. Just put home grounds and it'll pop up, and then you can search spider mites in there and it'll give you different methods that you can use for edible foods.
Sometimes spider mites are attracted to really dry conditions too, right, Megan? And so, you know, maybe even some, I know it's probably not great for potential fungal issues, but sometimes spraying down the plants like tomatoes, for example, in a really dry time can kind of reduce the amount of maybe spider mites that are there.
Awesome. Well, I think that catches us up on all the questions that were there. So we appreciate you all participating with us today, and we thank our presenters for giving us all of that great knowledge that they have on the topic of herbs.
I also did just want to add that as you leave today, there will be an option for you to take a quick survey to give us some feedback about the program. It's not too long of a survey, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes to fill that out. And our next virtual farm to table session will be next Friday at 2 p.m. and we'll be talking about potatoes. So I hope you can join us then. Bye, everyone.